Just before 9:30 on this Thursday morning, you are watching continuous coverage of Hurricane Ian here at Fox 4. We are working to bring you more information, and it continues to come into our newsroom. Just a short time ago, the Charlotte County Sheriff's Office put this post on Facebook. They want everybody to know that the roads are really dangerous still. They say there are life-threatening situations with road washouts, downed trees and tree limbs, as well as power lines in the roads. They say, please stay at home for your own safety. We just heard the governor say Charlotte County, one of the hardest hit areas, is an area where power is out to virtually all of the county.
Yeah, so we want to go check in with our John Barron. He's been in Charlotte County since before the storm made landfall. And John, can you just kind of paint the picture? What are you seeing there now in Punta Gorda, Charlotte County? Are you in Punta Gorda or Port Charlotte?
Right now we're in Punta Gorda, but you can kind of take a look and paint that picture for you, Amy, like you were saying. This is kind of like many of the roads that we're seeing here in Southwest Florida. A lot of flooding, and honestly, it's one of those things that when you think you could drive through it, it's best to not do so because you cannot see the bottom of the road. But we can show you kind of like how deep it is just even this close. You can kind of see right here the stop sign knocked over by that heavy wind from last night here on Berry Street. And as you can see, really, that's kind of the biggest part of this all is how much flooding we're starting to see kind of recede back into the ocean. But really, one of the biggest parts is how much destruction we're seeing here all over Southwest Florida. As you can see, look at this fence line right here in this neighbor's yard, just completely battered and destroyed. And you can even see some of that debris, how strong it was last night and early this morning. You can still see right here some of that metal bent around that palm tree right here. And many of these stop signs bent and pulled over as well. So you can really see just how much destruction and devastation we're starting to wake up to here in Southwest Florida. You mentioned that Charlotte County had posted those lines about those power lines being down and many of the destruction we're seeing here in Southwest Florida. That is a good point because we have been driving around all morning and we've seen nothing but down power lines, having to take different routes to get to different areas here in Punta Gorda and Port Charlotte, here in all of Charlotte County. So we're seeing a lot of that here, and that's something that we're really starting to see amp up. And really something else I want to show you guys is just at the top of this roof. This is not a brand new construction site. This is a fully finished house. You can see that top of the roof shining right there, as you can just see some of that destruction continue to make its way here in Southwest Florida. Even their porch right here, just over here around the bend, you can see is now landed in their front yard off to the side. And that's how much this wind was really starting to batter us here in Southwest Florida. We're starting to wake up and see that. And you also mentioned that they wanted to make sure that a lot of these residents and people in this area need to stay inside because of how much destruction that we're seeing. We're seeing quite a bit of activity. Everybody waking up wanting to see how much devastation we're seeing around the area. We're advising, just like them, to make sure you guys stay in your house, stay indoors, and make sure you guys are getting ready to just try to get that power that they're trying to get back to you guys. We've seen that FPL is really starting to make sure they're really restoring that. Same with LCEC. So we're starting to see those power crews really kind of make their way here in Southwest Florida, but continuously we're seeing a lot of people making their way outside. That's something that we don't really want to see, but we'll continue to bring you guys all the latest here in Punta Gorda, and we'll continue to do so all morning long and into the afternoon. Here in Punta Gorda, John Barron, Fox 4.
John, quick question for you, if you can hang around for a second. I'm curious, the damage behind you is pretty bad. Everywhere you're driving, is it like that, or do you go through pockets where it's worse and pockets where it's not as bad?
Chris, I would like to say that there have been some areas that have not been this bad, but it's been almost equal, if not a little bit less, maybe even a little bit greater in some of these areas. That this destruction is really being felt all around here in Charlotte County, Punta Gorda. It's really one of those things that it's kind of been a maintained area that really most of us have seen this. A lot of houses, I will say, have been in the good graces of not having the roofs torn off, many of those windows staying intact. So some of those neighborhoods that we did drive through, we've seen a lot of debris on the ground, some of those areas really being affected by that. But thankfully, some of those people have been able to wake up and realize that their house is still intact. But unfortunately, that's not the same for a lot of people here. But it's still waking up, and they're kind of waking up in the dark. Okay, they're starting to turn on those generators. We're hearing a lot of that. We're starting to hear the hum of the generators as we start to drive through many of these neighborhoods. So they're starting to restore power to their own house. But we're waiting to see exactly how long it should take to see the power come back to many of these communities later on in the day.
All right, John, thank you for those images and that perspective there. You know, sometimes when we have a storm like this, we see damage like that. Maybe it's concentrated to a certain area, but we're basically seeing the same scene over and over, no matter where you go in Southwest Florida. Fort Myers is one of those areas as well. And on top of the damage, unfortunately, we've seen a couple of house fires today as well.
Yeah, so we want to show you some video from Fort Myers house fire. Crews, let's take a look at that video. They worked on that. It's not something you expect, right? When you think of a storm, you think of the water and the wind, but we have seen multiple. You have down power lines mixed with water, mixed with debris, or, you know, things blowing when the electricity kind of blows out and the what's that thing called? Transmission box blows. So this is something we just want to thank our first responders, the fire crews out there, not just putting out those fires and working to rescue people, but they're doing tough work while some of them are even learning that they don't have homes to go home to. And it wasn't just a Southwest Florida event, though. The governor touched on this, that it was Central Florida, Tampa, Orlando, and it could be other states as we continue to watch Ian move out of Florida.
Yeah, and you wouldn't think Central Florida would have as much flooding as they have, but we're getting some new video into the Fox 4 newsroom, and we're seeing even in places like Kissimmee, we are seeing some pretty bad damage. I want to take you to Winter Park in Kissimmee, and they are dealing with their own kind of flooding there. Once we see this video, you'll see that this is not just a Southwest Florida issue. This hurricane brought a lot of rain to other parts of our state as well. So this is the video right here. You can see people riding in the back of that truck, presumably, you know, not feeling safe to drive their own vehicles through the water there. So, although Southwest Florida took the brunt of what Hurricane Ian had to offer, unfortunately, this is a statewide event, and as the governor said, the response is going to have to be statewide as well. Well, there you go. That's the reason right there. We see the road there. Not so much a road, it's a river.
Yeah, and you know, Trent, it's not over yet as far as the weather goes with this system, tropical storm now, right? You said you wouldn't even be shocked if it strengthened back into a hurricane. Other states are going to feel the impacts of Ian. This is just a storm that so many people across Florida and the country really may end up feeling.
Yeah, the Carolinas is possibly the next landfall. South Carolina with the rain shield moving well past that to the north. Now, I want to touch on that rain because it is historic. Matter of fact, the 8 o'clock advisory from the National Hurricane Center used the word catastrophic flooding occurring in central and north central Florida as these rain bands from Ian continue to wrap around. Reports in homes in Kissimmee 1 to 2 feet. Parts of the Florida Turnpike have been closed down today because they're simply impassable. So not so much a wind event, even though they had a hurricane move over the central part of the state. Now the center actually moved near Melbourne. You can see it offshore almost exactly over the areas of Merritt Island and Titusville, but the heaviest rain has been located off to the north. What it's doing, it's using the Atlantic as fuel, the warm Gulf Stream waters that move up the coast of the Carolinas off the northeast, and it's pulling all of that rainfall in, and it continues to come down. Now from I-75 over, we're starting to see it taper off, but boy, I tell you what, from the Turnpike into Orlando, I-4 northbound here, it is still pouring, and especially areas off to the north, there around Daytona. As we look here between Daytona and Jacksonville, US 1, I-95 right there along the coast, Crescent City, Pearson, and De Leon Springs, it is just absolutely pouring. And they've still got tropical storm force winds of 65 miles per hour with gusts that are still hurricane force. So scattered power outages here, a little flooding along the coastline there due to the onshore flow and some weak surge, if you will. But it is the freshwater rainfall that continues to impact areas here off to the north. And you can see kind of where that rain begins to taper off. And it's right there between St. Augustine, Gainesville, not quite in on it, and the Palm Coast area. Let me show you, I'll find that latest advisory here from the National Hurricane Center, and I'll walk you through the forecast because this is forecast to become a strong tropical storm, possibly even a hurricane again as it gets close to the Carolinas. This was that 8 o'clock advisory where we had the winds of 65 moving northeast at 8, and it's going to exit the coastline here shortly just north of Melbourne. From this point on, continues towards the coast of the Carolinas and right there up to 70 miles per hour south of Charleston. Hurricane status starts at 74 miles per hour or greater, so this will be yet another storyline as it enters the Carolinas. a much different storm. Even if it were to hit hurricane status, it's a Category 1, but even a weak Category 1 could have substantial impacts here. Nothing like what we've seen here in Southwest Florida, but just the storm continues to be ongoing. Overnight last night, Ian maintained hurricane status up until the 5 o'clock advisory, where it was finally downgraded. So this thing was ramped up and as powerful as you can get, because even though it was interacting and right over land, it was still Category 2 and then a 1 as it moved there through the central part of the state. So Chris and Amy will continue to watch for flooding concerns up there. And of course, the damage video continues to roll in here to Fox 4 for us here in Southwest Florida.
Unfortunately, it does. The more people get out, the more we're seeing, especially now that it's light. We have some aerial live pictures we'd like to show you of the Sanibel area, is what I'm being told. And here is a look at that. You can see just water everywhere. Yeah, this is a helicopter view of the damage. We're being told this is Sanibel, although they may have moved on. Boy, that line of boats there, you'd have to figure that is some kind of rescue operation, or they're just out of picture to the left, but it looked like.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
so that's not Sanibel Island yet. That's the Sanibel outlet. So
Sure.
It's called Tanger Outlets there along Summerlin Road. And then we have all of those communities just before you get to the toll booth there.
Yeah.
That's what we're looking at. Right now, this is that aerial video. You just see the water. There are a lot of mobile home and manufactured home communities right there in that area before you get to the causeway. So it's not just the island that's dealing with it. It's also these communities here. And again, we are seeing this with you for the first time as you're watching it too. And I just want to say, because we are getting a lot of individual requests for assistance, help, here at Fox 4. We are here with you. We want to be able to help you, but we unfortunately cannot respond to those individual requests. You have to call 911 if you are in a life-threatening emergency, or you have to reach out to your local sheriff's office or emergency management department and let them know that you need help. It is a tough pill to swallow, if you will. We understand how uncomfortable and how scary it might be if you have severe damage, but we unfortunately cannot help you here at Fox 4 with specific individual requests for assistance. The numbers you want to call if you're not in an emergency situation, but you feel like you need a welfare check on someone, or you may need help that's not a dire emergency. In Collier County is 252-9300, and in Lee County is 477-1000. But again, if you're just joining us, what you're looking at are some of the first aerial views that we're seeing. This is from a helicopter flying over I don't want to call it Sanibel because it's not the island. It's the area in Fort Myers just before Iona McGregor, right there by Tanger Outlets.
Exactly. The Sanibel Outlets there sit right there on Summerlin. That's the area to the north. So the body of water just to the north of there is the Caloosahatchee. And for those of you who are watching, maybe evacuated on our OTT platforms and streaming, the communities there are the Woodlands at Shell Point, Palm Acres, and Catalpa Cove. And Amy, you nailed it earlier when you were talking about the mobile homes, and it appears the helicopter is moving a bit. Not sure which direction. It looks like that's perhaps a little bit better well-built apartment complex. I know there's a senior living facility there.
Shell Point.
Shell Point, right?
They
I don't know. That's not Shell Point, but there are a lot of
Yeah.
condos and villas in that area. You know, close to the water. It's prime real estate here in Southwest Florida.
Sure, and I think some of the water we're seeing now might just be the normal lakes that are supposed to be there, but certainly earlier when we saw the manufactured homes, those were underwater. In some cases, they were on their sides. They'd been flipped over.
All right, there we go. Now we're starting to turn towards Sanibel, and hopefully you'll see some landmarks there. The Harbor Resort and Spa, the Bimini Bait Shack, if it's still standing. You saw a little more there of the
there's a fire.
preserve area.
Is that a fire?
Yeah, there's
There's
smoke.
fire.
Yeah, it's smoke at least.
It's just hard to take in here, getting these first images of Sanibel, or not quite Sanibel, but on the way.
Right.
This helicopter came from the East Coast. This is a helicopter that was shared by one of my former stations, PLG and WSVN. So they're coming from east to west, moving all the way out there. So they're not even quite yet to the causeway where we've been able to confirm the collapse there on Section A, just past the toll plaza. Trying to figure out which way we're looking now, but you can see the extent there.
Another
There's another
fire.
fire.
Wow. Man, it just
Just
leaves you
heartbreaking.
speechless looking at this because it's hard enough to go through the storm, but now
Right. Yeah.
it's hard to
the-
watch.
The roof is engulfed, and unfortunately, there may not be anything, depending on how the water is right around this house. There may not be anything the fire department can do to get there. They may be, unable to even drive there.
And that's the tough reality. Hopefully, I pray no one's in that home. Hopefully, they're out. But that's the tough reality for people who are in these situations we've never found ourselves in, where you hunkered down, you stayed at your house, and now you're finding yourself maybe.
Ugh, look at that. Trent, I was struck by something you said earlier. A lot of these houses, hopefully, probably most of them have their hurricane shutters on.
Yeah.
So the next door neighbors may not even realize that something's happening next door like that.
Yeah, you just hope that everyone in this area evacuated, right? And this is some kind of fire that was caused by equipment that was left on or some kind of electrical short caused by the flooding. But we see this often after powerful hurricanes like this move through. But what makes it different for us this time is it's our backyard.
Yeah.
You just got to be so careful. And this is just another exclamation point on the end of that sentence. Please stay home right now. It is not safe for you to be out and about. And
Yeah, look at that. Look, there's a car driving through the water right there. Now, I can't tell if that's an emergency vehicle or not. It doesn't really look like it, but
let's hope so. If it's not, you shouldn't really be out on the roadways, and that's the message. Stay
water
home.
on the road there. Again, to reset this is South Fort Myers, right in the area as you get to the causeway. We have a crew on the causeway who saw some of this activity and alerted us, but there's a lot of water still right there, and water on the road, and in this view, there's a canal there, I guess, but we hadn't seen any bodies of water. It's not like we'd seen the river anywhere near this, but yet there's all this water everywhere.
Yeah, yesterday when this storm came on shore, we were talking about Sanibel taking the first brunt of this, and we had a crew station there at Punta Rasa at the Marriott Sanibel Harbor Resort, and we were asked how long we were going to be in the eye, and we told them several more hours, and we were talking 3 to 5. Later on in the evening, Sanibel ended back in the southern part of the eye wall and eventually the southwest eye, and that entire area was just inundated from water from the Gulf and also from the Caloosahatchee. And this particular location, if you move north of Summerlin there, it's actually technically the Caloosahatchee River that starts to flow up towards Fort Myers.
Right. It's overwhelming. This video we're seeing, the damage we're seeing, the water everywhere. It's overwhelming to think about what it's going to take for these people to get their lives back to where they were. So much work is going to have to be done.
Yeah, and the governor said years. It's going to take years to rebuild and recover. It's going to be a really long process. This is historic. We have not seen this here in Southwest Florida. Today is about helping people who are in situations that they need to get out of. So today is about helping, rescuing. We will get to the recovery. And it's just, I'm not too often speechless, but.
No, well, this is one of those situations. There was a vehicle there, possibly a rescue. I think actually it was just an SUV driving through the water.